right, Jesse on Fire, welcome back to the channel. So let's talk about Cyril Gane and the future of the heavyweight division after that fight last night, because that's going to change some things, you guys. Like, I didn't really even think about it before the fight, what the implications of that fight were, based on, okay, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? It just sounded like a fun fight because I really like Tai Tuivasa. And so I went into it just kind of watching it just blank, like, all right, let's see what happens. And after the fight, it's like, oh, that actually, because Cyril just lost to Francis in his last fight, right? And so you're sitting there kind of forgetting that you're watching the heavyweight division. When you're watching the heavyweight division, it's not the same as watching other divisions because things can change very, very quickly because there's so few top guys, There's only a handful of top guys. And you got some guys hurt, etc. I'm going to go over all of that, but I want to talk about what it means because I think a John Jones fight might be all up in the mix. Maybe. And then we'll talk about Francis's team, etc. And we'll go from there. Now, if you like the content, go ahead and hit the subscribe button because we're about to hit 75,000. And the faster we can get there, the better. I think it'll probably happen in a couple weeks. But, I would appreciate the bump. I work hard on this channel for you guys and for myself because I like doing it. I'm going to do another video later. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do 2 videos later. And one of them is going to be on my other channel, Jesse on Everything, which I highly suggest that you go give it a run if you've never watched it before. I'm going to talk today. I talk about all kinds of stuff on that channel, but today I'm going to talk about the new Lord of the Rings series. And I will tell you in advance, if you've never seen my other channel, basically 100% of the people who subscribe, I think I have 19,000 subscribers or something. Topics that generally don't get promoted by the, but nonetheless, every single person who watches my stuff over there, this is definitely your best channel. And I agree with that. But I'm going to light that fucking show up, dude. I am going to light that show up. So give it a run. And then I'm going to also do a video on here about Mark Zuckerberg and his recent, he's training. Look good. But there's a little bit more to it than I think meets the eye. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to put that on this channel, though. Anyway, all right. So you go into that fight last night, right? And it's like I said, dude, it was a great card. It was a great card. That Buckley fight was awesome. That dude, oh, God, I'm not going to stop this just to look up his name. But the dude that beat Buckley, he's nasty. And Buckley's nasty. Like that is how you go out, son. That's how you go out. Swinging. And I'm just going to stop and say, I'm going to say a little bit about him before we get into the heavyweight thing, just because I can't do a whole video on it, but I want to say this. I made a comment about Buckley after his last fight in UFC Austin, where I said he's like a legitimately dangerous guy. And I will stand by that. Like, he is a dude that he's scary, dude. That's a good thing for a fighter, right? But he's like a scary dude. And, but man, does that translate into exciting fights, man. He just went out swinging, son. Like last second, just swinging for the fences, knowing he wanted to get it done. And then he made a tweet afterwards saying, you can't beat what you can't break or something like that. And he's like, go out swinging. He's like, we just ran out of time. He can say that, like I didn't lose. I just ran out of time. And you know what? When you go out like that, you can say that. You're fighting another man. We all train in gyms and all that. Like, what happens. Like, just keep going. Like, if you you want to keep going. You know that the end of the fight, at some point, someone's going to wilt and break, right? And it's not generally going to be sometimes from damage, but a lot of times it's because you just can't do it anymore. And he showed no signs of that. So he gets to say that. Congratulations to him on a really impressive loss. I'm being serious about that, Anyway, and then the Whitaker fight was cool, but the Gane fight, again, like I went into it just kind of like, all right, let's see what happens. And again, I hadn't even really considered what would happen because you have you got Cyril who just lost to Francis, and then you have Tai Tuivasa, and it's like, even if Tai Tuivasa won, then yeah, maybe he's in the mix for a title shot. But like, I don't know, like just because of who he is and how he fights, you almost still are like if he like caught Cyril, and he put him down, he almost did. You're like, okay, so what would you have done with Tai Tuivasa after that? You just throw him straight into a title fight? Maybe. Honestly, maybe. But you still kind of have that feeling where it's like, all right, like that's how he's going to have to win against a guy like John Jones, right? Like he's going to have to he's going to have to get through a barrage of hell and catch him, which is something he could do, But I just hadn't really considered like that this would have like real serious title implications, because I thought Ty was probably still a fight off, maybe, and Cyril had just lost to Francis, and I hadn't done the math, like I hadn't done the MMA math. What happens if? And had I done the math and really thought about it, and especially considered the fact that Cyril Gane is in France, they're fighting in France for the first time, and the reception that Cyril is going to get, I would have realized exactly what actually happened, which is that Cyril is probably right there for an interim title fight against John Jones now, in my opinion. I think there's a high probability that he ends up, fighting against John Jones for the interim belt, because I think that if the UFC is looking at the landscape, they do not want. I mean, listen, like I've heard Stipe is awesome, and I've heard that from people who know him well. Anthony knows him really well. He says he's an amazing guy. So I only say this as it relates to other rumors I've heard about, Stipe's relationship with the UFC. It's not good. They're like, I can't remember who it is, but one of the guys over there, like one of the main guys, like Mick Maynard, Sean Shelby, Hunter, and Dana. It's not Dana, but one of those other three guys who are like the main three dudes around Dana has like a really like not good relationship with Stipe, and I can't remember which one it is. But listen, it's one of those things where if you sell a lot of pay-per-views, like if you're a needle pusher, like the guys that are in those seats are going to figure out a way to have a good relationship with you, But like to them, they just know, like Stipe is a known entity. They know exactly what kind of numbers Stipe will do, right? And so they don't want him to be champion. Like he's not going to drive the needle. Cyril still has potential. That fight last night showed much more than just how good Cyril is as a fighter, right? Like when he was at home and he was in front of that crowd, you go watch his post-fight speech from that fight right there and then compare it to when he won the interim belt off Derek Lewis. That was a different person, dude. He's been working on English. He's been like something about being in front of his home crowd. He looked charismatic and comfortable. Like here's the thing. So, and again, like the John Jones fight, that's a massive fight, dude. Like that is a massive, 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 massive fight. And Francis's team, Eric is saying that they all want the Jones fight, right? Like Francis wants the Jones fight. I know, obviously, Francis and his management and everybody have made very clear that they really want that Tyson Fury fight for obvious reasons. You're talking about an absolutely astronomical amount of money. And if for no other reason, they want to negotiate against the UFC with Francis as a free agent, because remember, his sunset clause is in December. So either way, Francis is going to become an unrestricted free agent before the end of the year. Okay, that's why the UFC is talking about putting a fight right in front of Francis's end date. Where they're like, oh, we want to get him to fight like in December. It's because they want to offer him a fight, have him turn it down, so that they have legal basis to say, no, this kicks in another extension. We offered him a fight. This kicks in another extension, and so like he's not actually a free agent. Now, again, I have said this before too. I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I've said this before too. I don't think they're going to go to court. I think that's a bluff. I think the UFC saying that they're going to take Francis to court over his contract is a bluff. And the reason is because if they do take him to court and Francis and this team wins, what that does is it gives legal certainty to the sunset clause. Okay, now everybody has a sunset clause in their contract, but no one has ever gone to court and actually banged it out with the UFC. The second someone does that and a judge says, nope, this right here supersedes everything else in the contract, then all the other UFC fighters that have sunset clauses, now they know they have a real end date to their contract. It'll change things. It's my guess is they're not actually going to do that for that reason, because they don't want all the other, like they want to be able to like loom heavy, like, are you really going to be out of your contract though, dude? You're not, are you really out of your contract? That sunset clause, I don't know, man. Anyway, but so that's why they're offering him the fight in December, but Francis is not going to be healthy yet. right? So you figure that in the event that they do that, they're gonna put an interim fight, or an interim title fight in December. And that is just smart because if Francis does leave, they need a champion. They need a champion, and they need a champion that's believable. And Cyril Gane last night became a believable champion. I think everybody who watched that, if you really think about it, if you you play this thing out. Now, obviously, if Jon Jones wins, that's the UFC's skeleton key, right? That opens everything up. That opens everything up because they could say Jon Jones was the undefeated light heavyweight champion, and now he's a champion in the heavyweight division. They'll go full court press to make everyone, to convince everyone that Francis is whatever. If Francis does leave the UFC, and they'll just be like, listen, guys, let's be honest, right? Let's be honest. When they fought Cyril, on the feet, he was outmatched. Now, they won't mention the fact that he had a torn MCL in that fight. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that when Cyril and Francis fought, Francis had a torn MCL and he still fought. Insane. On his pivot leg. Literally one of the worst injuries you could go in with. A torn MCL on your pivot leg. So he went into that fight severely handicapped against a guy like Cyril who moves like that. There's no other heavyweight that moves like him. So, but they're going to say, we saw how he fought Cyril. He had to resort to wrestling, and Cyril wasn't prepared for that yet, but he's been doing nothing but training for that. How do you think this goes now that Cyril has good takedown defense? That's the game they'll play, trying to delegitimize Francis as the champion. And if Jon wins, they'll just be like, yeah, Jon Jones has never lost, and he came up and now he's the champion in UFC. Francis is not going to be able to wrestle Jon Jones, so how's he going to win? They'll play that game and try to deal. The problem is that, the fans know, everybody knows, Francis is the champion. Francis is the champion. But the UFC has to play defense. They have to play defense. If Francis leaves, you can't just just be like, oh man, our real champion is out making this huge payday in boxing and he's never coming back. So you gotta you have to convince the world that the best fighter at the weight class is your champion. Because that's never happened before. If the real champion in their prime leaves the UFC, that's never happened. It's never happened. Never. It's never happened. And I think that puts the UFC in a defensive position when they're negotiating with Francis. But I think they'll get a deal done. It just might need to include, I don't know, a lot more money or include the Tyson Fury fight. I love that Tyson Fury fight, especially in MMA gloves, but I think I know what's going to happen. I think everybody kind of feels like they know what's going to happen. If I wanted, my dream fight is still Deontay Wilder and Francis in MMA gloves. But, shit. I'm going to buy the Tyson Fury fight like everybody else. You know what I mean? But anyway, so when you look at the heavyweight division, right? You've got Curtis Blades, but he just won by, injury, right? You've got Tom, oh my God, Aspinall, who just folded his knee in half. He would have been a great candidate too, to get right in there. If he would have run through Curtis Blades, he would have been a great candidate, but now he's laid up. Curtis Blades has lost to Francis by knockout twice. That's a tough sell, dude. Curtis Blades is the champion now. It's I think the champion, I think we saw him knock him out twice, And I will certainly acknowledge that Curtis Blades is a different fighter now. He's nasty. But we're talking about narrative. We're not talking about the story that you need to tell people. So Curtis is out. Aspinall's out, right? And then you got, Derek Lewis is out for sure. And then you got Tai Tuivasa, Cyril Gane, Jon Jones, and Stipe. But Stipe's been out. The last time we saw Stipe, he got flat backed, and that was a long time ago. And so what do you got? Seriously, if you want to do this Jon Jones fight not with Francis, what do you got? You're doing it with Cyril. Maybe you could do it with Stipe. But Stipe's not a spring chicken either. And I think they've got to think about the fact it's okay, so if The other guy can win. John Jones is not a known entity right now. Right? I mean, I think John Jones will come in as a favorite against Stipe for sure. Maybe against Cyril. But Cyril is a fucking nightmare, dude. Cyril's a fucking nightmare. Did you guys watch that fight last night? Like, seriously, did you watch that fight? Cyril Gane is a fucking nightmare at heavyweight. A nightmare. And honestly, I want to redefine, when I watched that fight, I was thinking to myself, I need to redefine how people are looking at this guy right now, because he was undefeated, and then Francis beat him, and everyone's like, oh, he doesn't know how to wrestle. He doesn't know how to wrestle. And, last night he fought a striker, and he pieced him apart. But bottom line is, you think that Cyril's not working on his wrestling? Like, you think that Cyril Gane, does he strike you as a cerebral fighter? Does he strike you as a person where if he finds out that he has weaknesses, that he probably address them? Because I think he would. Because how did Francis find out he needed to shore that up? His first title shot, right? Francis's first title shot, he got wrestled by Stipe. I was willing to bet my life that Francis was going to win that fight against Stipe at the time. But he got wrestled. And guess what? He learned how to wrestle himself. And it's lucky that he did, because fighting Cyril with a torn MCL was going to be pretty fucking hard if he didn't know how to wrestle, but he did. And so if you're Cyril and you come out of that, you think he's not working on his wrestling? So if he gets to a place where he has really legit takedown defense, I mean, bottom line, you don't want it, dude. You don't fucking want it. But you definitely don't want it with Francis without a torn. Like, if you watch Francis in the fight against Stipe, and then you watch him in the fight against Cyril, it's so obvious that he was compromised. It's so fucking obvious. In the first two rounds, he's not moving at all like he was against Stipe. He had a torn MCL. A torn MCL. I knew this going into the fight. I was so fucking nervous, dude. I was so nervous. And I mean, anyway, bottom line is, I think there's a good chance that Cyril ends up fighting John Jones. And listen, dude, if he beats John Jones, which is not even close to impossible, probably even maybe, I don't know about likely, but that's a great fight, dude. That's a great fight. Cyril versus John Jones is a fantastic fight. Matter of fact, give me that fucking fight. Give me that fight. Fuck Stipe versus John Jones. Not fuck Stipe, but fuck Stipe versus John Jones if my other option is Cyril versus John Jones. Give me that fucking fight, man. Give me. And then give me Francis versus whoever wins. I would love to see Francis fight Cyril again, where Francis doesn't have a torn MCL and Cyril knows Francis can fucking wrestle. Give me that fight again. Give it to me. Anyway, that's what I got. Make sure to watch the other two videos I put up today on Jesse on everything and this one about Zuck. Peace.